Okay, with this video we're going to show you how to make the memory cable connection between your MEM-3400 board and the static RAM sockets on the ET-3400 trainer. So we're going to start out, we're going to need a piece of flex ribbon here. The one we supply you may have more ribbons on it than you need for this because we only need 24 pins. This one happens to have more, so what I did is I counted out 24 pins worth and I peel off the excess so that I have only 24 conductors in my ribbon. Next thing you're going to need is your 24 pin header connector here and two dip socket connectors where the ribbon is going to connect into your static RAM sockets on your trainer. You have to be very careful with these because they have very sensitive pins on the bottom that you can bend and break off. So we're going to have to be very careful when we're crimping these that we don't damage the pins on the bottom of these dip sockets. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our header connector. We're going to look for, there's a mark on it, it's pretty hard to see on this camera, but anyway, you'll see on one of the pins here at one end, you'll see a little triangular mark that points to pin 1 on the connector. On the ribbon itself, there's a red stripe on the top. That's what needs to connect to pin 1, so you get your orientation of your cable right. The way this works is you feed the ribbon into the slot in the connector so that it's just barely protruding out the side. And then with your hand, you can kind of pinch it a little bit to hold it in place. You'll hear it snap, but it won't be totally crimped. It's just going to kind of hold that ribbon cable in place so it doesn't slip. Now, in order to crimp this, you're going to need to have some kind of a vise. So here's my vise. All I do is I take my cable, put it in my vise, like so, crank the vise down until it snaps all the way tight. And we know that we have our connector on. So it should look like that right here, connected onto the cable. Next step is we're going to put on our dip headers. So what I have to do is one of the dip headers gets all of the conductors connected to it. These are actually 20-pin dip headers. The IC sockets on the trainer only have 18 pins, so we're not going to use all the pins on these because we couldn't find 18-pin ones. They don't make them anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to only use 18 of the 20 pins. So the next thing we need to do is we need to separate our ribbon cable here again and remove 6 of the conductors so that we get 18 conductors on one part and 6 on the other. So I got my glasses on, make sure I got that right here. One more. Okay, so I have 6 now separated. So I peel that back a ways, and now I can use one of my dip sockets to connect on to the ribbon cable here. Same procedure. The socket here is marked with a very small slot in one corner for pin 1 on the side. You want to line that up again with the red part of the ribbon. Slide that in on that end so it's just protruding out the other end a little ways. You can use your fingers to pinch at both ends and crimp it down so it's fairly tight before we put it into our try to get it in there all the way right. Okay. I think we got it. Oh, now I got one extra one in there. Didn't do that quite right. There we go. I want to make sure I only have 18 wires. I have my 19th wire in there. Now we're good. So once I have it in there, you're going to want to make sure that the 2 conductors on the end don't have any ribbons going into them. Only ribbons should go into the top 18. So the 2 bottom ones should not be connected. I'll crimp it down tight. There, it latched. I can align it a little better here. Now we're going to crimp it the rest of the way, but now we want to protect our pins. from getting bent, which I actually did bend one a little bit. Straighten that pin out. In order to do that, what I want to do is use something down the center of the conductor here, like the connector, like a pencil, or I have a X-Acto knife here that I can lay in there so that it'll protect these pins from getting bent when I crimp it down. So I take my tool here, I lay it in the slot between the pins like that, and we'll come back over to our vise, stick the ribbon in the vise with the tool, and now we'll crimp it down all the way. So you can see the pins are not going to get pinched, they're going to get protected by the thing that I put in there. Okay, we're crimped all the way. I'll remove it. So now we have that conductor on there. So now we got to take our last 6 wires, and this is the more complicated part. We're going to separate these 6 wires individually because they go to 6 different pins on the last socket. So I'm peeling them apart one at a time using my fingernails. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my last socket here, and I'm actually going to take the housing off the back. It's removable. And I'm going to put my wires in the order that they go. I'm going to manually install them into the connectors using my fingernails so that they can get held in place before I put the backing on the connector. Now again, you want to be very careful here because you don't want to bend these pins. So normally what I'll do is try to hold the connector in my hand. This first wire goes on pin 20, so I'll lay it in the slot for pin 20, and using my fingernails, I'll just push it down into that connector. Get it lined up right. There we go. Okay, so I got it started into the slot so it's not going to come loose. Then the next one goes on pin 16. So I skip 3, and it goes on the same side as the one I put on already. So I'm going to go down to here. Get it in there and push it down. Careful not to poke yourself. Remember to hold on to the sides of it when you're pushing it in there. Next one goes on the next pin down, so pin 15, and pin 14. So I'm doing these in order on the ribbon as I'm coming down the ribbon here. And pin 13. Now the last one is our ground connection. That one's going to go on pin 10. Now remember, we're skipping the bottom 2 pins here, so pin 10 is one up on the left side. Okay, so when we're done, it should look something like this. We got pin 20, then we skip 3, 16, 15, 14, 13, and the bottom 2 here on this side are empty. Then over on the other side, 1 up from the bottom, we have our ground on pin 10. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the backing on it again. The trick to this is stick the backing even with the ends, so that it's lined up with the tabs on each end, like so. Then lay it upside down on the table, and with your fingernails on each end, push down until it latches. Okay, you heard it snap. Now that'll hold your wires in place so that we can crimp. You want to make sure that none of your wires that go onto the right side got pinched into any of the connectors on the left. So they should all be cleared in between the connectors on this left side, but pushed down onto the connectors on the right. So now we can take this, we can crimp it in our vise. Again, we have to lay our tool in there to protect it, like so. Put it in the vise, like so. And we're going to crank her down, latch her in place. Okay. So it wasn't too terrible. Again, the key is, make sure that you didn't bend any of the pins on these connectors. Okay, so all the pins here should be straight, not bent. And if you want to, the unused pins at the bottom end of each of these connectors, you could break them off, just so you don't get confused when you're plugging into the socket. So you could remove the bottom 2 connectors. But there's our completed cable. When we're done, it should look something like this. Okay, we have, there we go. One of our dip sockets has all the wires connected, all 18. The bottom 2 pins are empty, and the next connector has individual pins wired, as shown on your diagram and as we talked about. So that's it for making that connector. That's the hardest part of doing this.